A single misstep at Niagara Falls means certain death with the crushing weight of 600,000 gallons per second, slamming bodies against jagged rocks. People who survive the initial impact often last only minutes in the freezing waters before hypothermia sets in. Yet across history, hundreds have met their end at the falls, some by accident, others by choice, and a few through unimaginable acts of recklessness. Today, we'll examine the 10 most shocking deaths that reveal both the raw power of the falls and humanity's complex relationship with one of nature's deadliest wonders. Number 10. Joseph Avery, 1853. In July 1853, Joseph Avery and two companions were fishing when their boat capsized in the rapids above the falls. While his friends were swept away instantly, Avery managed to cling to a log that had become wedged between rocks just 300 feet from the brink. For 18 agonizing hours, he held on as thousands gathered along the shore to witness his fight for survival. Rescue attempts began immediately. A boat was lowered by rope, but the current tore it away before reaching him. Next, a raft was constructed and floated toward Avery with a rope attached. He managed to grab the line but couldn't secure himself properly. When rescuers began pulling the raft to shore, Avery lost his grip on the log. The crowd watched in horror as Avery clung desperately to the raft while being dragged through the rapids. For a brief moment, it appeared he might survive as the raft approached shore. But just as hope peaked, the rope snapped. The current immediately seized both Avery and the raft, carrying them toward the edge. Witnesses described Avery raising his hands in prayer moments before plummeting over Horseshoe Falls. His body was recovered days later, so battered by the rocks that identification was difficult. Newspapers across America covered the tragedy extensively, marking one of the first media spectacles centered around the falls. What makes Avery's death particularly haunting is how public it was. Thousands watched helplessly from shore, including professional rescuers with boats, ropes, and equipment. The slow-motion tragedy unfolded over nearly a full day, giving onlookers plenty of time to arrive from surrounding towns. Some reports indicate that vendors even sold refreshments to the growing crowd. Avery's death led to the first serious discussions about installing permanent rescue equipment near dangerous sections of the river. Within a year, safety stations with lifelines and flotation devices appeared along the upper rapids, innovations that would save dozens of lives in coming decades. His tragic end also marked a turning point in how Americans viewed the falls, not just as a wonder, but as a deadly force requiring respect and caution. Number 9. George Stathakis, 1930. Greek immigrant George Stathakis spent his life savings building a massive 2,000-pound oak and steel barrel for his attempt to conquer Niagara Falls. Unlike other daredevils seeking fame, the 46-year-old restaurant worker had philosophical motivations. He claimed the stunt would help him commune with nature and planned to write a book about his spiritual experience. On July 5, 1930, he climbed into his creation along with his pet turtle Sunny, whom he believed would bring good luck. The barrel successfully survived the plunge over Horseshoe Falls, proving Stathakis' design was sound. But disaster struck when it became trapped in the curtain of water behind the falls. Rescuers could see the barrel, but couldn't reach it due to the dangerous currents. For 22 hours, it remained stuck in what rescuers called the worst possible spot. Not enough force to push it out, but enough water to prevent anyone from reaching it. Stathakis had prepared for many contingencies, but not this one. His barrel contained only enough oxygen for approximately 3 hours. While trapped in the thundering darkness, he slowly suffocated as rescuers made futile attempts to dislodge the barrel. By the time the current finally shifted and pushed his vessel into retrievable waters, Stathakis had been dead for many hours. In a bizarre twist, his pet turtle Sunny survived the ordeal. The turtle, estimated to be 150 years old, lived for another 20 years after the stunt. Some believe this supported Stathakis' spiritual claims, while scientists pointed out that turtles require much less oxygen than humans, explaining how it survived while its owner perished. What makes Stathakos's death uniquely terrible was its prolonged nature. Rescuers and witnesses knew he was trapped but alive for the first few hours, creating a sense of helplessness as they watched his air supply inevitably dwindle. The barrel itself was remarkably undamaged, showing that his engineering was sound. Had it not become trapped, he likely would have survived like other successful barrel riders. The falls claimed not just his life, but his legacy. Stathakis had arranged for reporters to document his triumph and publish his philosophical writings upon successful completion. Instead, his notebooks and manuscripts were water damaged beyond recovery when the barrel was finally opened. His death stands as a grim reminder that even the most careful planning can't account for all of nature's variables. Number 8. Ayano Tokumasu, 2011. 20-year-old Ayano Tokumasu came to Niagara Falls as an exchange student, studying English in Toronto. On a sunny August day in 2011, she visited the Canadian side of the falls with friends. Witnesses reported seeing her climb onto a railing to pose for a photograph when she lost her balance. She slipped and fell approximately 80 feet into the powerful Niagara River just above Horseshoe Falls. The current moves at approximately 25 miles per hour at that section, giving Tokumasu no chance to swim against it. Tourists frantically called for help as she was swept toward the brink, but the speed of the water made a rescue impossible. Within seconds, she disappeared over the edge as horrified onlookers watched helplessly. Her body was recovered hours later by staff on the Maid of the Mist tour boat. What makes this tragedy particularly disturbing is how quickly it happened. Security camera footage showed just 10 seconds elapsed between her fall and going over the edge. Not enough time for even trained emergency personnel to respond. Her death highlighted how even visitors following marked paths can be at risk if they ignore safety barriers. Tokumasu's death sparked international coverage and raised questions about safety measures at the falls. While railings and warning signs were plentiful, critics argued more could be done to prevent visitors from climbing over them for photos. In response, officials installed additional warning signs in multiple languages and increased security patrols near popular photo spots. The psychological impact on witnesses was severe. Over 30 tourists saw her fall, including children and elderly visitors. Tourism officials arranged emergency counseling for those traumatized by witnessing the event. Several reported having nightmares for months afterward, with one saying, "One minute she was smiling for a picture, the next she was gone forever." Perhaps most tragic was the ordinariness of her actions. Risk assessment experts noted that tourists climb railings for photos at landmarks worldwide every day. Tokumasu wasn't being reckless by typical tourist standards, just participating in the common behavior of seeking a better photo angle. Her death serves as a reminder that at Niagara Falls, even minor rule breaking can have fatal consequences within seconds. Number 7. Robert Overacker, 1995. On October 1st, 1995, Robert Overacker roared toward Horseshoe Falls on a jet ski in what was planned as a publicity stunt to raise awareness for the homeless. The 39-year-old Californian had carefully planned his stunt, wearing a specialized rocket-propelled parachute designed to deploy at the last second as he went over the edge. Dozens of people, including his brother and best friend, gathered to witness what they believed would be a triumphant feat. As Overacker approached the brink, he stood up on his jet ski and activated his parachute system. The machine plummeted 170 feet to the rocks below, while Overacker remained briefly suspended. But something went catastrophically wrong. Either the parachute failed to fully deploy or became tangled. Witnesses reported seeing it only partially open before Overacker plunged into the churning waters below. Rescue teams responded immediately, but the powerful currents made recovery nearly impossible. The Maid of the Mist tour boat eventually retrieved his body from the water, but despite CPR efforts, Overacker was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Later investigation revealed he had died from massive injuries sustained on impact, suggesting he hit rocks rather than the deeper sections of the water basin. What makes this death particularly tragic was the extensive planning that went into it. Overacker wasn't an amateur thrill seeker, but had spent 2 years preparing for the stunt. He had successfully tested the parachute system in other high-stress environments. His brother later revealed they had consulted with professional stuntmen and engineers who had assured them the plan was sound. The parachute's failure raised questions about equipment reliability in extreme environments. Engineers who later examined photos of the partially deployed chute suggested that the immense updrafts created by the falls, which can exceed 68 miles per hour, may have interfered with the deployment mechanism. These powerful air currents, created by the massive waterfall, weren't fully factored into the equipment testing. Overacker became the 4th person to die attempting a stunt at Niagara Falls in the modern era, and his death led to stricter enforcement of anti-stunting laws on both the American and Canadian sides. While he had obtained no permits for his attempt, authorities acknowledged they had limited ability to prevent such stunts without constant surveillance. His jet ski, remarkably intact after the plunge, was kept by local police as a grim reminder used in water safety presentations. Number 6. Jesse Sharp, 1990. On June 5, 1990, professional whitewater kayaker Jesse Sharp arrived at Niagara Falls with an audacious plan. The 28-year-old from Tennessee intended to navigate Horseshoe Falls in his 13-foot kayak without a helmet or life vest. Sharp, who had previously conquered dangerous Class 5 rapids across America, believed bulky safety equipment would hinder his paddling technique and prevent him from maintaining proper control during the 170-foot descent. Sharp's confidence bordered on arrogance. He booked a dinner reservation for that evening at a restaurant downstream and asked onlookers to photograph his feet since he couldn't afford a professional photographer. Park officials tried to dissuade him, but lacking laws specifically prohibiting such attempts at the time, they could only watch as he launched his kayak from the upper river and paddled toward the brink. Witnesses reported that Sharp maintained perfect form as he approached the edge, even executing a textbook kayaker's move called a power stroke to increase his speed just before going over. His green kayak was briefly visible as it plummeted down the falls before disappearing into the churning white water below. Despite extensive searches, neither Sharp nor his kayak was ever recovered. What makes Sharp's death particularly notable was its completely voluntary nature. Unlike many victims who accidentally fall in or miscalculate risks, Sharp had meticulously studied the falls. He knew the survival statistics and deliberately chose to attempt the stunt without safety gear that might have saved his life. His death certificate remains unusual, listing neither a recovered body nor confirmed physical remains. The psychological aspects of Sharp's fatal attempt fascinate researchers. He was described by friends as having an extreme calculating personality, who methodically assessed risks but consistently pushed boundaries. Notes found in his car showed complex calculations about water volume, impact forces, and trajectory, revealing he fully understood the dangers but believed his skill would overcome them. Sharp's disappearance changed how authorities approached stunting attempts at Niagara. Within months, both the US and Canada enacted specific anti-stunting legislation with substantial fines. Rangers also received additional training in spotting potential daredevils before they enter the water. Though his body was never found, Sharp's legacy lives on in the enhanced security measures designed to prevent others from following his fatal path. Number 5. James Honeycutt, 1960. On July 9, 1960, James Honeycutt took his friend's children, 17-year-old Deanne Woodward and her 7-year-old brother Roger, for a boat ride above Niagara Falls. What began as an innocent sightseeing trip turned catastrophic when their aluminum motorboat ran out of gas in the upper Niagara River. Without power, the current quickly pulled them toward the Horseshoe Falls. As they drifted into the rapids, Honeycutt desperately tried to restart the engine, but failed. Realizing disaster was imminent, Honeycutt ordered both children to put on life jackets. There was only one adult-sized vest remaining, which he helped Deanne secure before the boat capsized in the rapids approximately 300 yards from the brink. Deanne managed to swim to a small island, where rescuers eventually retrieved her. Honeycutt and young Roger, however, were swept directly toward the falls. Witnesses watched in horror as the man and boy went over the edge. Remarkably, Roger Woodward survived the 170-foot plunge, becoming the first person to accidentally go over the falls without a barrel or protective device and live. The life jacket Honeycutt had insisted he wear kept him afloat, and the crew of the Maid of the Mist tour boat spotted him in the churning water and pulled him aboard with only minor injuries. Honeycutt wasn't as fortunate. His body was recovered 4 days later, battered beyond recognition. Autopsy results indicated he had died from massive trauma caused by either the impact with the water or being dashed against rocks at the base of the falls. Reports suggest he may have tried to protect Roger during the fall, possibly positioning himself to absorb some of the impact. The tragedy became known as the Miracle at Niagara due to Roger's survival, but often overlooked is Honeycutt's final act of selflessness. By securing life jackets on both children, while foregoing one himself, he likely sacrificed his own chance at survival. Roger Woodward, in interviews as an adult, credited Honeycutt with saving his life through this act. The incident led to significant safety improvements in the upper Niagara River. Stronger warning buoys were installed, and emergency cutoff systems became mandatory on rental boats. Boat patrols were increased during summer months, and a comprehensive early warning system was developed to alert authorities when vessels drifted into dangerous currents. In death, Honeycutt inadvertently spurred safety changes that would save countless lives in the decades that followed. Number 4. Annie Taylor's assistant, 1901. Before Annie Edson Taylor became the first person to survive a barrel trip over Niagara Falls in 1901, her unnamed assistant played a crucial role in the stunt's development. This young man, whose identity remains contested in historical records, worked closely with Taylor to design and test the custom oak and iron barrel. While Taylor soaked up the glory, few realize her historic achievement came at the cost of her assistant's life. Taylor needed proof her barrel could survive the plunge before risking her own life. In early October 1901, she convinced her assistant to send the barrel over with only a cat inside as a test subject. When both barrel and cat survived unharmed, Taylor grew confident in her design. However, she still harbored doubts about how a human body would withstand the impact. Historical accounts suggest she pressured her assistant to make a human test run, promising him a share of future publicity profits. On a foggy morning, just days before Taylor's scheduled attempt, witnesses reported seeing 2 figures pushing a barrel into the upper rapids. Only Taylor returned to shore. When questioned about her assistant's whereabouts, she claimed he had left to secure promotional deals in New York. The barrel was recovered downstream, severely damaged and empty, except for a man's watch and a torn piece of clothing, items later identified as belonging to her assistant. Taylor never publicly acknowledged this test run or her assistant's fate. She successfully completed her own barrel journey on October 24, 1901, becoming an international celebrity. When reporters inquired about her assistant's continued absence, she deflected questions and eventually claimed he had stolen promotional funds and fled to Europe. The truth emerged years later when Taylor's diary was discovered among her possessions after her death in 1921. Brief entries described her horror upon opening the test barrel and finding her assistant's body pulverized beyond recognition. Rather than report the death and risk having her own attempt prohibited, she disposed of the evidence and maintained the secret for the rest of her life. This death highlights the human cost of Niagara's daredevil history. While successful stunters achieved fame and fortune, many unnamed figures died during practice runs or failed attempts. Taylor's assistant represents perhaps the most deliberate sacrifice in pursuit of Niagara Falls fame, a life traded for another's place in history books. His unnamed grave, somewhere near the falls, serves as a testament to ambition's darker side. Number 3. Massimo Ruggiero, 2012. On August 14, 2012, Italian tourist Massimo Ruggiero was enjoying a peaceful afternoon at Niagara Falls when he spotted a woman struggling in the water near the Horseshoe Falls. Without hesitation, the 27-year-old student leapt over the security railing and entered the swiftly moving current in an attempt to save her. Witnesses described his powerful swimming strokes as he fought against the current to reach the woman. Ruggiero managed to grab the woman and briefly support her above water. For a few seconds, it appeared his rescue attempt might succeed as he pushed her toward a rock outcropping where she could hold on. Several tourists formed a human chain to try reaching them, extending walking sticks and jackets toward the pair. The woman managed to grab onto the impromptu lifeline and was pulled to safety. But the effort cost Ruggiero his own stability in the water. The current, moving at nearly 25 miles per hour at that point, immediately pulled him toward the brink once he released the woman. Park rangers attempted to throw rescue rings, but he was already too far into the current. Tourists watched helplessly as he was swept over the falls less than 30 seconds after successfully saving the woman's life. Rescue teams searched for Ruggiero for 3 days before recovering his body in the Whirlpool Rapids downstream. Autopsy results indicated he died from blunt force trauma sustained during the fall, suggesting he likely hit rocks rather than landing in deeper water. The woman he saved, later identified as a 23-year-old Canadian student who had been contemplating suicide, survived with only minor injuries. The Italian consulate arranged for Ruggiero's body to be returned to his hometown near Milan, where he received a hero's funeral attended by thousands. The mayor posthumously awarded him the city's highest civilian honor for bravery. At Niagara Falls, a small plaque commemorating his sacrifice was installed near the spot where he entered the water, making him one of the few victims individually memorialized at the site. What makes Ruggiero's death particularly poignant was its purely altruistic nature. Unlike daredevils seeking glory or distracted tourists who fell accidentally, he consciously chose to risk his life for a stranger. Psychological experts who studied the case noted the rarity of such pure altruism, when someone willingly accepts almost certain death to save someone they've never met. His final act has been included in ethics textbooks as an example of the highest form of human selflessness. Number 2. Kirk Jones, 2003 and 2017. Kirk Jones holds the distinction of being the only person to die twice at Niagara Falls, or more accurately, to survive once only to return and perish in a second attempt. His story begins in October 2003, when the 40-year-old unemployed auto parts salesman from Michigan shocked the world by becoming the first person to survive going over the falls with absolutely no protective gear. Wearing only his clothes, Jones plunged 170 feet over Horseshoe Falls and emerged with only minor injuries. Initially suspected of attempting suicide, Jones later claimed the jump was a daredevil stunt. He was fined $2,300 by Canadian authorities and banned from entering Canada for several years. For a brief period, he capitalized on his fame, appearing on talk shows and starting a short-lived career as a circus performer billed as the Miracle Man. When public interest waned, Jones faded into obscurity, reportedly struggling with depression and alcohol abuse. 14 years later, in April 2017, a large inflatable ball was spotted going over the falls. Authorities initially thought it was a prank until staff at the Maid of the Mist tour boat discovered a male body in the lower river days later. Fingerprint analysis identified the deceased as 53-year-old Kirk Jones. Investigation revealed he had purchased the 10-foot plastic ball, intending to survive a second trip over the falls while inside it. The bizarre plan apparently went wrong when Jones was ejected from the ball, either before or during the plunge. The empty ball was recovered, damaged but intact, while Jones' body showed massive trauma consistent with an unprotected fall. Investigators found a website domain registration in his possession for stuntsurvival.com, suggesting he had planned to revive his fame through an even more spectacular feat. What makes Jones's death particularly tragic is how it reflected his inability to move beyond his brief brush with fame. Friends reported he had never stopped talking about his 2003 survival, growing increasingly fixated on reclaiming his place in Niagara Falls history as years passed. Psychological experts suggest his death represents a dark case of what they call fame addiction, when a person becomes dangerously attached to public attention. Jones's dual encounters with the falls, surviving once only to die in a second attempt, mirror an observation often made by Niagara safety officials. The falls tend to claim those who don't respect them. His unlikely survival in 2003 perhaps created a fatal overconfidence that the natural wonder would spare him twice. Instead, his body now rests among the hundreds who underestimated Niagara's power, a cautionary tale about the high price of pursuing dangerous fame. Number 1. Hermit of Niagara, 1920s. For 7 years, a mysterious figure known only as the Hermit of Niagara lived in solitude on a small piece of land called Terrapin Point, directly adjacent to Horseshoe Falls. Francis Abbott, a 28-year-old Englishman, arrived at Niagara in 1829 and became so enchanted with the falls that he built a small cottage on the then undeveloped Goat Island. He lived within feet of the rushing water in a spot most considered too dangerous for permanent habitation due to frequently slippery conditions. Abbott was no ordinary hermit. Educated and refined, he was described as handsome and well-spoken, with exceptional skills as a musician and artist. He brought with him only a few books, a guitar, and basic provisions. When visitors occasionally encountered him, they noted his eloquence seemed at odds with his chosen isolation. He refused to discuss his past, though rumors suggested he came from British nobility and fled to America after some disgrace or tragedy. His daily routine involved dangerous activities that alarmed witnesses. Abbott regularly bathed in the rapids above the falls, swimming in waters that had claimed many lives. He constructed a precarious platform extending 15 feet over the gorge edge, where he would sit for hours in meditation regardless of weather conditions. During winter months, he was observed walking across ice formations at the brink, testing thin ice with his foot before proceeding. On June 10, 1831, Abbott went for his usual swim in a calmer section of river near the falls. When he failed to return to his cottage, a search began. 2 days later, his body was discovered downriver near Fort Niagara. He had apparently been swept over the falls during his swim, ending his mysterious vigil. Autopsy reports indicated drowning as the cause of death, with no signs of injury, suggesting he had been conscious when going over the edge. What makes Abbott's death uniquely tragic was the deliberate way he courted danger, while seemingly not pursuing death itself. For 7 years, he performed increasingly risky behaviors near the falls without incident, creating what psychologists would now call learned invulnerability, a false sense of safety developed through repeated exposure to danger without consequences. His death wasn't suicide in the traditional sense, but rather the inevitable result of a dangerous coexistence with the falls. After his death, Abbott's cottage was discovered to contain journals written in multiple languages, complex mathematical calculations about the fall's water volume, and detailed drawings of the gorge that rivaled professional surveys of the era. These suggested his isolation wasn't born of madness, but perhaps represented some form of obsessive scientific study. The Hermit of Niagara became one of the fall's most enduring legends, representing humanity's complicated attraction to natural danger, drawn close enough to perish, yet desiring to live in its presence. Niagara Falls continues to claim lives even today, despite modern barriers and warning systems. Each death teaches us something about the fall's power and about human nature itself. The line between respectful admiration and fatal attraction to natural wonders remains razor thin. As millions visit safely each year, these 10 stories remind us that behind the tourism and beauty lies a force that has never been truly conquered, only temporarily survived. What draws us to stand at the edge and look down? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in these stories. If you enjoyed this video, click on the link to enjoy more Did You Know facts.